Just leave it on for a couple of seconds, like in and out.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, welcome everyone. So my name is Bobby Adeld. I'm from Sweden, and this is...
My name is Alexander, and I am from England, but I'm here in Nepal and been travelling now for the last kind of 9 or 10 years. So, but I'm from England originally.
Yeah, so we're gonna open up your mind with some brilliant topics that we have been thinking about while we've been here in Nepal, you know, a country for a lot of great culture and open-mindedness. You know, Buddha was actually born here in Nepal. So we're going to talk a little bit about technocracy. How do you pronounce it right? That's right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So the coronavirus is on the topic of everyone's mouth today. What do you think about that?
Well, I can only talk from my own perspective, obviously, but from my point of view, it's really disturbing when I'm constantly seeing, you know, I'm connected with a lot of people online, first of all, but I'm seeing a lot of people with profile pictures saying, excuse me, stay home, stay safe. It seems to be the new kind of label that we're being, that's going around, and not just that, I've seen it a lot in the comments, you know, and it's people actually wishing me well. It's like, oh, please stay safe, you know, because it's from their point of view, they're very afraid. And only for me personally, I'm not afraid of a flu virus that's maybe come out of a laboratory, that's maybe come from a bat. These things happen. If you look at it, it happens every couple of years. It just happens to be whenever there's a presidential election that we get these pandemics. Yeah. And of course, this one has been really a big one, the biggest one that I think's ever been. And you know, these days now with the mass media and everything, just from my point of view, it seems to me very obviously that it's been absolutely hyped up. So from whatever, but when we're talking about coronavirus, I don't know. Is it actually? I've been consuming information about it because I really want to understand, and I have yet to be convinced that it even exists, that it's ever been isolated, and it just seems a glaringly obvious, like a very convenient cover story for anyway we're coming towards the end of the flu season. What you have to remember is that there are billions of us here in this world, billions of human beings. So when you get figures like thousands of people dying every day, well, that's normal, especially at this time of year. And you know, in fact, you know, like with this whole lockdown situation and everything, of course, many more people are going to suffer and die because of the fact that, you know, there's mental health issues, there's depression, and all of these things, people being isolated from each other. That, you know, my own mother can't visit my sister, she's epileptic. You know, they have to meet and have social distancing in a park, and she can only go out once a day. So for me, I'm not scared of the coronavirus. Of course, it's something that we have to think about because, you know, we'd be kind of neglect not to in a sense. But when I do think about it, I'm really yet to be convinced that it even exists.
Yeah, we are going to think very deep about this today, I think, as well, and bring up some things that we maybe haven't thought about yet. Like the death rate in India is like 0.03% of corona, and you know, more people are suffering death from suicides actually, and or hunger.
Yes,
yeah.
I would implore everyone to really do your due diligence and look into the statistics. If you see it, then Bill Gates is there laughing away with his little book saying how to manipulate people with statistics. And what I see is that's very obviously what's happening right now, because what you have to remember is that people die every day. People are born every minute. People die every minute of the day. And there was a really great one, I don't know how to find it, maybe I can find the link and share it, but it was like a guy who had a great big pile of rice, and if those grains of rice were for everyone in the world, it was a big pile of rice. And then if this was the suicide, then there was a little pile. And if this was cancer, then there's another little pile, and then, you know, so it went like that. And then for coronavirus, 1 grain of rice, you know, and actually to see it, it really kind of makes you more aware of the fact that this, of course, we're all afraid of dying of some horrible illness that's come out, maybe a laboratory and everything else. That is a scary thing for us to encounter this information. But I would implore you to really do your due diligence before you start to be consumed with this kind of fear-based response, which is obviously what's wanted from us by. I mean, we can move on to that question, you know, about like where is the real seat of power now in this world, in this new global economy, and all of these new kind of concepts that we're hearing about. And
And one thing I'm thinking about that is pretty, you know, it opens up for a lot of questioning, is that we don't have a lockdown back at home in Sweden, and it's like if the virus would be so deadly, you know, all of Sweden would be wiped out, I guess. And we haven't seen that.
yeah, for me, I was very happy to see that Sweden had taken that step, and from again my perspective and from the limited research that I've done, it seems to be that the death rate is not altogether very different from anywhere else.
No.
And then on top of that, you've got the fact that now anyone who's falling down the stairs and breaking their legs, and at the same time they're being tested,
Coronavirus.
and if they're coming up positive for this, you know, and what are they actually testing us for? What is this new test that's being kind of, you know, is it really something, you know, that test, it really, I'm yet to be convinced that there's some kind of special flu virus. I think it's more of a disharmony, a disease within the cells, and there could be many reasons for that. And what they're actually testing for is something that we all have, these viruses laying dormant, or kind of, some of us don't, but many of us do have markers for these different illnesses. And I just, from my point of view, it seems that we're just being completely fucked over with this hype in the media.
Yeah, definitely, and we see it pretty much here as well. People walking with masks, and like, if the masks would help, like, why aren't more shops open? And if the masks don't help, why are we forced to wear them? You know.
Well, when it comes to these masks, I think that's really another very disturbing part of all of this. It's really about a disconnection of normal human interaction. And when we talk about the depression and the psychological, the mental health issues that are now obviously going to develop and are developing, you know, to tell people that they now have to have a face mask, and it's actually not healthy, and it's hardly likely to save you from these flu virus, which I'm also yet to be proved that it can be transmitted from person to person even. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I know it sounds strange because we are literally being bombarded with this contagious kind of narrative, but I'm not so sure that that's how it works.
Yeah, and you know, selling cotton masks, it would only like everything would just sum up there next to your mouth. It wouldn't
Yes,
help very much, you know. And wasn't it like this Nazi Germany began? Like, the world is now, you know, everything is locked down, and they're telling us like, it's for your own good, you know.
Oh well, that's exactly what the Nazis said.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely an authoritarian movement now, of this kind of fascist technocracy that we've seen happening. You know, those of us that have looked into these issues, we've been aware of this for many years, and we've been sharing about it, we've been getting banned for it, and you know, this is not something that's just happened now. This is like the end game, so to speak, we could say. And
yeah, and that would bring us, what would their agenda be? Like, if there is like one government that rules all the world, like one deep state government, what would their agenda be, you think?
well,
From your
we know because they've actually signed off on it.
yeah.
And at first it was called Agenda 21, it's been kind of revamped into Agenda 2030.
Yeah.
And the more that that's a complete rabbit hole, the more that you actually look into it, and I implore everyone to look into it, because it is the agenda that has been signed off on by all of our world leaders. So we ought to know what it is, and that was signed in 1992. And that's about eradicating the middle class. It's about keeping people in a kind of Hunger Games society. So if you've seen that movie Hunger Games, it's about a kind of an elite class who basically abuse everyone else, and that's what they have absolutely admitted to what they want to create in the world. So, I mean, I would just say you should go and look at what is Agenda 21. So they're building all of these housing units. So it's like literally about keeping people in boxes, and all of these high-speed rail links with the 5G and everything else. It's all about controlling the population, and it's about limiting your freedom. It's about taking away your opportunities, and it's an abhorrent agenda.
Would Neuralink and Elon Musk have anything to do with this new Gestapo thing, you think? Like, we see it happening here now, you know,
For me, it infuriates me when I see him going on Joe Rogan, and Rogan, you see, on the one hand, I have a lot of time for him because he's obviously just a kind of a nice guy, but I think that they've got to him, and I don't know what's actually going on, but when I see him there talking to Elon Musk in some kind of excited way about the fact that he wants to put chips into people's brains, and he's actually trying to tell you that that's a good idea. It's just, to me, it's absolutely a very, very bad idea. What we actually face now when we talk about technocracy is an artificial intelligence which is like an off-world attack upon humanity, and that's obviously has its human puppets. But it's it's kind of reminds me like Terminator 2 with these new robo-dogs running around the parks. And I mean, it would be funny if it's so kind of obvious to see, like it's like they don't hide it, it's just like in your face, even before it happens with the predictive programming. And then, for example, I've got, I'm getting a little bit in my middle ages now, but then I've got younger friends and I'm introducing them to this, so when it was the Olympic Games in 2012, I was here in Nepal for the first time, and I had like a mental and emotional, what the doctor would call a breakdown. When I went back to England, my mum insisted that I told the doctor exactly what happened, and he said, well, you've had a mental emotional breakdown, but for me it was a breakthrough, and I did have a very dangerous path through that phase of my life. But one of the main catalysts for what happened was the Olympic Games in London, because it was in my country and I was following it. And just to see the opening ceremony and all of this kind of, it was like a mass satanic ritual. And, well, again, if you haven't seen that, the opening ceremony from the Olympic Games in 2012, it's a play. You've got all of the children stuck in their beds, jumping up and down, and then you've got these guys dressed all in black running around, which could be seen as the virus, the invisible enemy, and then they're fighting and grabbing the children and stuff like that. And you have to watch it for yourself. I mean, but it's purely, surely predictive programming for what was to come, and we're living through that now.
Yeah, today I've been seeing a lot more censorship in the media about many things, and also on our social platforms as well, where we would think that we would have freedom of speech still, but I see things getting taken away on YouTube, which is owned by Google, which is probably ARPANET, and
well, the Western world is built on the concept of freedom of thought and freedom of speech. So that is kind of why the West has, there have been historically many problems, obviously, but one of the things that has been hard won is freedom of thought and freedom of expression and freedom of speech. And those of us who've been paying attention can see that those have been getting badly eroded, especially the last 2 or 3 years, but even, the last 20 years, it's just been, it's almost like slowly, piece by piece, it's like, and then obviously one of the big movements was that they banned Alex Jones from all of the Apple and everything else, and he got completely banned. And whether you agree with him or not, that is a removal of his freedom of speech. So because of the internet, it's gone beyond the nation state's kind of control, and that's why now China is the new kind of normal, that we're kind of with this cultural Marxism kind of marching towards a kind of dystopian nightmare society. And anyone who wants to try and say, don't be racist, don't say anything bad about China, I mean, you have to really get over yourself and all of this political correctness, which is just about fascism. It's exactly what we're talking about. It's like when the Nazis said, this is for your own benefit, and so they control the narrative first. And that's what's really, really disturbing and scary about this time, is that like we're now in a situation where that's just being normalised, and you know, now many people are being deplatformed. I was also banned from Facebook for 3 months. What was my crime? I shared an article about Facebook banning flat earth groups because it came up on my feed. I didn't really read it that much, so I read it a bit and I thought, oh, that sounds like a well-written piece. So I just shared it. The moment I hit share, my entire Facebook went down, and they said, and then what they did in a very underhanded way was they said, you have to give us a code from an old mobile phone that was 2 years old that they know I've not got anymore because I've updated the phone number to my Norwegian number. So it's almost like I knew that they were just, I mean, at first I was like, why is it not coming through? And then I checked the number, I was like, hang on a minute, what's that number? And it's just like they kind of did it in a dishonest way. They couldn't even tell me, oh, we're now banning you because you've done this and you've shared an article about us banning flat earth groups. I could have respected that more, that they could have just at least told me what's happening, but they couldn't even tell me, you know?
Yeah.
And also what it is now, I've also got like a large audience now here in Nepal, and I think that's the other thing. If you're doing this on a small scale, then they'll just kind of ignore it. But or they won't ignore it. They'll be aware of it, but they won't. It's only when you start to go viral that they're going to take you out. And of course, you know, the narratives that are going popular are the ones that people are actually engaged with. So we're being scammed. It's a big. I mean, it makes me just, you know, sitting here now to actually just talk and vocalise it. It's just so sickening to see, you know. I mean, I love this world, I love the people, and, you know, human beings are incredible creatures, and, you know, of course we don't all see eye to eye and we don't all get on, but that's not this is an attack upon humanity itself. It's not one group. You have to get over all of this bullshit about the political correctness, which is a vehicle which is being used with the climate change and the political correctness to bring in this abhorrent agenda. And
yeah, and everything starts, this is actually a good topic, because everything starts really in the childhood as well, with one authority and who controls the information we get, you know?
Let me just tell you one thing. When I was a kid, I'm a dyslexic first of all, so that's a word we can use. That's what they told me at school. I was supposed to go to a special second class room and I avoided it, and I remember that. Now, so I also struggled with spelling, but it was mostly maths. And so, if you can imagine, we live in a world where if you can't do maths, then you're stupid. Fuck off. You know, like you have to be able to do maths. And I don't see why does every single child have to be good at maths? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And the more you look into it, with all of this ADHD and children. You know, the entire education system is just built on a kind of intellectual kind of elitism that it made me cry my eyes out. When I first went to the Steiner School, when I was doing a kind of charity work in England, singing after I'd been in prison and I'd had many problems in my life, and I was singing and telling them the story about why they shouldn't take drugs and why they should be aware of the problems that are in the world. And the kids that got up, and they've never been indoctrinated. The Rudolf Steiner School is a very, very different system that they use. The curriculum is completely different, and those kids were just like light bulbs in awareness, just giving out pure vibration of confidence in the creativity. And I think too many children just get failed by the school system, and that they end up just being confused and lost when they're in the most important time of their lives. And also I think we put children to school too quickly, we put too many burdens on them when they're too young, and actually
keep them distracted from the most important things, which is learning, which should be fun, you know? Knowledge, everyone should seek knowledge.
Yeah, and it should be based on the individual.
Yeah.
So if that individual is not good at maths, then they will be good at something else, you know, because we're all here for a reason. We're all here with a destiny. And like I posted the other day, you know, you're lucky if you can find it. But we all, I believe, and I know that we're all here for a divine, a higher purpose. And it's that which is under attack, because that goes against the controlling kind of system.
Yeah, and all these agenda, like the Agenda 21 and the mainstream media, you know, the things we're fed in school, everything, the system, it's like you know, if you want to be the gray man, it's like hiding in plain sight. That's the best thing you can do, and that's exactly what's happening, right?
Yes, yes.
So
It's being normalised in that sense that it's just being, yeah, I mean, you can see it in the advertisement, you can see it in the music industry, which is another whole rabbit hole when you look into it, and you can through BitChute and stuff now. You won't find that stuff on YouTube, but that whole industry is very controlled, and even the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Doors and all of these heroes of mine musically were also completely contacted by that same agenda, and you know, limited in what they could do safely, because they will otherwise, you know. And then if you really think that John Lennon was murdered by some kind of guy who was crazy, well, maybe, but I think it's also a much bigger possibility that that was a CIA mind-controlled asset. And,
same as Kennedy, if
well,
you, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Kennedy, yeah, that's another huge one, isn't it?
Yeah.
We don't really know what happened exactly, but what we do know is that you can't get shot twice in the back. You know, it was all a cover-up. And actually, he actually talked very clearly and succinctly about this secretive, controlling, behind-the-scenes cult that's actually controlling government, this industrial-military complex and military-industrial complex, and all of this kind of big money in the world, which is just buying off the politicians through the lobbyists, and they get their agenda through, whether the vast majority of the population of the world will like it or not. Kennedy was against that for sure, and that's what got him killed, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear to see, like, if you just ask yourself where the money goes, that opens up like the main gate to all of these questions that we're bringing up. Because, yeah, you know.
Well, if you think about the borders, yeah, so we're told that there's all of these strict world borders, and every border, I mean, can you imagine? There's 70 million people in my country. Now, everyone is consuming stuff that's coming through the border, and everything gets taxed. Not only at the border, but with value-added tax, and it's hugely, hugely taxed. And then, you know, so it's just all about exploitation, this whole system. And I actually, when it comes down to this nationalism versus globalism, I think that's a fake kind of paradigm in a sense. You know, I think it's kind of, are we really up against Russia with the missiles and everything else, or is it just to make people live in fear and independence and in need of a government who can control that situation as they present it?
Yeah, when people get like uncertain of things, people would rather go to something that they hate than doing the uncertain thing, and people are afraid to speak up for themselves as well. That's why we don't have democracy today. We're having the same system that's been used like 2,000 years or more.
Yeah. And this whole left versus right kind of paradigm, you know, but really, whoever you vote for, the governments still get in, you know, like, and it's
the same coin.
Yeah, it's
heads or tails, same coin.
And actually, they're just, I don't know how aware a lot of them are. Some of them obviously are very, very involved and completely complicit, but some of them are just useful idiots. In fact, I think a majority of them are just useful idiots, and it's need-to-know basis. That's how they control people, you know. It's like, even at the very top echelons, there'll be things that they don't know, because they have been prevented from knowing that detail, so that they're going in this direction because that's what they... And yeah, when you talk about the Masons and you know, they actually... I mean, I've looked into a lot of this stuff. You can call it conspiracy theories if you want, but to become a 33rd degree Mason, you have to, in my opinion, you have to display, you have to show, you have to prove that you are a person who lacks empathy, who lacks compassion, and who lacks basic human dignity and humanity and respect for other people.
Like becoming an SS, like they had to strangle their own dog that they brought up. And
it's some kind of ritual, and they work themselves through the process. And then, you know, if you look at where the White House is with the Masonic, it's all about the symbology. You know, they actually have to. You have to permission your own enslavement. So what they actually do is, of course, it's all very confused and everything else. But what they have to do is they have to put these logos, which are satanic, Masonic kind of. What's that word? Yes, these logos, they have to put them there to so that you're actually agreeing with it, even subconsciously, even if you don't understand it in your thinking mind. On a spiritual level, it's it's an interchange, it's an interplay.
Like somewhere where you can enforce the control, or like energy goes where energy is. So if you feed a lot of energy in certain things, they will become powerful. Even if we don't like it or know about it, it's just the laws of the universe, really, right? So that leads us into like other states of consciousness, I guess. And like, how would you say that you woke up from this deep sleep?
Wow, I try and make it as in a concise way, but yeah. First of all, we were talking about the school stuff, and when I left school, I got bad grades for my GCSEs, which is what we take when we're 16 years old. So I didn't get the grades to get into the preferred course that I was supposed to do, and it wasn't till years later, when I was around 21 years old, that I came out of a prison sentence, which I went to prison because of a drugs charge, and I was in prison for 2 years. I got 3.5 years and I served 2 years. And then when I came out, my mom insisted that I go to a private rehabilitation centre. Mm-hmm. And then when I was first there in the rehab, I would say, I mean, whether we know it or not, we're always waking up every day, we're always learning new things, and we're always moving away from a point of ignorance, hopefully towards a, well, I don't know, for me that's how it was. And anyway, so then I was in rehab, and the counsellor at that time, she was asking me, tell me about your childhood. And it was at that point that I started to notice, because when she first asked me, well, my childhood was great, I had a great childhood. And it wasn't until she kept asking me, the counsellor, week by week, that I started to look into it, and there were some very subtle issues there that I'd kind of just covered up, and I wasn't aware of them. So I would say that was really the beginning of my awakening at that age. And then I went in and out of rehabs again, and I had a lot more problems all throughout my 20s, back in prisons, back in institutions, because I could not cope with life on its own terms. And it wasn't until I started travelling, actually watched a great documentary called Thrive. You know Thrive? Yeah. And I remember watching that in Arambol in Goa, and I was travelling for the first time, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was just like, holy shit, like everything that I've believed in is... Oh, and also with the media, I was involved in a news story. There was riots in Bristol. It was actually the day after my birthday in 2011. There was Bristol riots against the Tesco's, which was coming in, and all of the local businesses were going to have to close because Tesco's can undercut them, and so there was all these protests, and then there were riots. And then, I was interviewed by the BBC, and the BBC basically completely misquoted me and just took very selective bits out, and it was all. Then I realised, oh my God, they just want to build a narrative. They're not interested in the truth at all, at all. So. Hey guys. Namaste. Namaste. So that was another element of, but yes, then there was the Thrive movie, and I remember the next day after that, I just felt different. I just felt like, and actually it is very unsettling when you come face to face with these issues, that we have this parasitic kind of very, very few people who control the world from the shadows, and when that hits you and you really feel it in your gut, then that actually... First of all, that's hard to actually be honest about it, because we want to avoid that. We want to just kind of not think about it. Yeah. But when we're forced to think about it, then it throws us necessarily into a point of a recognition of awareness. And then I did different spiritual teachings. There was yeah, my great teaching is it's now called Balanced View. At that time, it was called Great Freedom. It's about short moments of awareness. So everything is a meditation. Even right now, here in this chair, we can tap in with what's essential, which is beyond thinking. So we just say, stop thinking for a moment. And what remains in that quiet space, that's awareness, what's looking. And what's looking never changes. What's looking is always on, and so then you can start to say, well, what has no other? What's primary about our human experience, and so yeah, I did the thing called the 12 Inquiries. I did the 12 Steps of Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I worked those through. So that's all about kind of dealing with your shame and your kind of resentments. Mm-hmm. So we all carry around these different layers of trauma and shame and resentment, and a lot of the time we're not aware of them. So there's a peeling away, a gradual, and that work goes on. I don't really believe in this